It is truly amazing how different everyone's lives are, and how quickly they can change for better or worse. As different as we all are, one thing we all have in common is the pursuit of happiness. What will make our life full and memorable? There's a lot of perspectives on how to live a fulfilling life, but I've found this is something you must find for yourself. 6 months ago, I lost the business I had been building for 4 years, and I hit the road. I found myself on a soul-searching mission and asking myself some tough questions. At first, it was simply, what was I gonna do next? Then it shifted to other questions. What would be a worthwhile and fulfilling pursuit? What mattered the most to me? These are questions that I had never really answered before. There are many paths we can take in life, and it's tough to tell which is right or wrong. And often, there isn't a right or a wrong. But one thing is for sure, we only have so much time, and we are always spending it. The average American will live to be 77 years old, and recently, I decided to look up how we spend that time. You will spend roughly 60 years where your life revolves around education or work. That's practically your whole life. What if you had no passion for your work? What if you never found the time to pursue your dreams, that big bucket list, or whatever it is? Was that a life well lived? What does it even mean to live a full and happy life? It's not a loaded question at all, right? I believe it is in building a life where you can maximize your time doing the things that bring you joy. It's a broad definition, on purpose. Some of us look at this as work-life balance, 4-day work weeks, and even remote work. You don't need to have a passion for it as long as it pays and it doesn't drain you while you're doing it. And there's nothing wrong with this for so many people. They still find their fulfillment. However, I still see some who are working for their weekend, and I think that can easily become a recipe to waste your life. I've come to the opinion that work is too much of our lives to not have some serious passion for it. Then there's the next group. There are some people who love their work so much that it's no longer work to them. It's what excites them. It's what they think and talk about. Sure, there are tough days with tough problems, but they're the types of problems worth solving. These people spend their lives doing what they love, and they can earn a living, or a few, while doing it. I see this as the ideal path, the intersection of what you love, what you are naturally talented at, and what brings value to the world. The problem is, most of us don't have an answer to that question, and that leads us with the third group. The people who don't know what career would ever bring them that type of fulfillment. You have to experiment and try new things. Think back to your childhood interests and hobbies. Sometimes you leave everything behind, looking for an answer, questioning if the path you're on was ever the right path to begin with. This is my story of looking for the answers to these tough questions, and I hope by sharing this, it can help you think about your life and either solidify the path you're on or encourage you to make a change. The story of looking for these answers didn't start when I lost the business. Those events only put these questions at the forefront of my mind. The truth is, I've been asking these questions for most of my life. I think that it's really common for younger guys to see making money as their primary goal once they get out of high school or college. And maybe I've been spending too much time with the hippies out here, but there's so much more to the equation than just money. I decided that I was going to work hard, doing something practical. And when I was 20 years old, I entered into an agreement to purchase a commercial cleaning company. Back then, I figured I didn't need to be passionate about it as long as it provided the money and the time to be able to pursue those things on my free time. But my long-term plan was to grow that business to a certain size where I could either sell it or roll the cash flow into something that was more in line with my passions. But I really never knew what that was. You see, I'd had a lot of interest and I'd never pinned down something that really was a true passion for me. Despite all the ups and downs in that business and all the headaches that came with it, it was successful and my plan was working. And that's when I was able to take the time to pursue this lifelong dream of building this ambulance. Some of you already know the story of how I lost the business, and that's really not what this video is about. It's about what I discovered after. When I first hit the road, it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before in my life. I had gotten that company to crest the 7-figure mark. I thought that I'd made it and that I'd figured it out. It's crazy how quickly things can change. Because now I was living out of my vehicle. I no longer had a home base, and I was confronted with the question of, what was I gonna do now? I came face to face with a massive crossroads in my life. I could start over and build another cleaning company. I didn't have a real passion for the industry, but I had spent 4 years of my life building that business, and I knew that I could go ahead and do it again. I'd already gone through the learning curve. Or I could make the shift and pursue a business in an area of real passion. The problem was I was too vague, and I really didn't know what that path looked like. There's a quote that I've been going over for well over a month and a half, and I wish I heard it when I first hit the road. There comes a time in every man's life when he finds himself at a crossroads, a chance to choose between two paths. One is unknown, filled with potential and struggles that demand growth and change, but could lead to new beginnings. The other is familiar, grooved with well-worn ruts and established twist. Within my first week on the road, I made the decision to start another cleaning company in a city where I didn't know anyone. I took the path that I knew had the highest probability of being financially rewarding. So I got to work, getting everything that I needed to hit the ground running with this new company. I decided that I was going to go ahead and do this in Denver, Colorado, and I started working my way across the West. And on my way there, I found myself working for some of the most spectacular locations you could imagine. You see, this had been my dream to live like this ever since I was a young kid. And for the first time in my life, I was living it. But I knew it was temporary, and it got harder and harder for me to imagine returning to the city. To be honest with you, my plans started to feel like a trap, and I wouldn't acknowledge that. This is what I loved, the great outdoors, exploring, and best of all, testing the vehicle I had spent so much time, effort, and research into building. I found myself reconnecting with so many lost childhood interests. So I started to think back to when I was younger. What was I really interested in? What brought me joy back then? Maybe there was another path that I had ignored at some point along the way. You see, when I was a kid, I had a ton of different interests and I tried a lot of different things. But looking back at it now, everything that I did fell into two categories, and that was the outdoors and building cool stuff. The outdoors had always been my escape. It was where I had always felt the most comfortable. I learned to hunt, set traps, find water, and light fires. I got into homestead food production, quail, meat rabbits, aquaponics, beekeeping, and all sorts of other stuff. And that was me till about 7th grade. When I got a little older, my interest in the outdoors turned to all of the cool stuff you could do outside. Surfing, rock climbing, dirt biking, backpacking, and the list could go on forever, especially the list of things I haven't even tried yet, my own bucket list. And pretty much everything else in my life could be ground down to building stuff. Starting with childhood forts, then turning to chicken coops and other small projects when I was in middle school. Then I got a little older and things turned, well, a bit more experimental. In high school, I started dabbling in mechanics, fabrication, and electrical projects. I bought my first truck, and I remember I would just sit there underneath of it in the driveway, just looking at how everything worked. That truck was mine to experiment on. I pulled the engine and rebuilt it. I did a solid axle 4-wheel drive conversion in the driveway, welded up the front bumper, painted it, tore out the carpet and bedlined the interior, and so many other projects. Childhood forts soon turned into an interest in tiny homes. I started taking classes on computer-aided design and started to design my own build. It never came to fruition, but designing that house taught me all about planning small spaces. What I found particularly interesting was making them off-grid capable, solar and battery systems, insulation strategies, water collection systems, and all that stuff. When I was 16, I took that old Chevy truck and I put a shell in the back. I made a bed with some storage under it and I took off. I discovered the world of van life and I was hooked on the idea. It seemed to be the definition of adventure, minimalism, and off-grid self-reliance. It became my biggest goal to build a rig for myself. Building this ambulance was the fulfillment of that goal. It was the biggest project that I had ever taken on. Thinking back through all this made me think about who I was before I started working on this commercial cleaning company. I knew that my true passions lied somewhere in the outdoor industry, in building cool stuff. But how was I going to translate that into something that would really bring value to the world? AKA, how was I going to make a living doing that? Especially something that let me really live the life I still wanted to live, being able to roam freely, something that was scalable so I could still, pursue money to some degree. I didn't know what that was, so I continued with my plan. After being on the road for about 5 weeks, I found myself down a rocky desert road that led to this lake. It was my desert oasis of a home for the next 2 weeks, and I felt myself at peak enjoyment. This is what I had always wanted to be doing. I would wake up, make some coffee, say hi to the donkeys, and work outside for a while, and finally go explore on my dirt bike. I was having a great time, despite everything that was going on simultaneously. That enjoyment is what spurred on the idea to do a quick rig tour and post a video of my ambulance. I was surprised to see just how many other people were interested in it. So I got a bit distracted and I made some more videos. I enjoyed sharing this rig and just how I used it out here. And for a moment I thought, what if I turned my attention towards making quality videos, and perhaps that could point me in the right direction and some opportunity would present itself along the way. I had no idea what that opportunity might be, but what I did know is that the people who were watching my videos, they had the same interest as me, and that means something. It struck me that this could be a path towards pursuing my passions. The crossroads had shown itself again, but this time with a bit more promise. But I still wasn't there. Instead, I tried to find some way to have it help me jumpstart the new cleaning company. I started to make videos about building the business instead. And it did work. It got me a list of pre-launch clients that were ready for the service in Denver. It also brought me some great connections with other business owners, as well as just different contacts in general. I met a lot of people just through posting these videos. I started to see some promising results. I'd been alone out in nature for over 4 months at that point. I'd spent practically all my time alone, divided between getting things ready to launch the new cleaning business and making videos. I found it to be exhausting, attempting to do both, especially considering everything seems to take longer when you're living on the road. So I stopped making videos and I went radio silent on here. I put my energy towards getting this new company to launch because that's what was going to provide an income for me. It was the most important thing. It came time for my final push into Denver, and I started preparing myself mentally to be there for the next several years at a minimum. I could feel the resistance deep inside, but for whatever reason, I couldn't admit it to myself. I needed to get some footage for several social media ads I was going to be running for the new company. My goal was to find some people who would actually be in these ads. So before I dropped into the city, I made it a point to come out of the deeper woods and actually go to places where I'd meet people. I found myself around people again, not just a conversation at the pump.
Can you get pulled over for having that shit?
Oh, I'm sure I could.
I didn't realize how long it had really been, and it was good to be around others. I met fellow climbers, Chris and Meredith, outside of Gunnison. And after climbing, I got us some pizza.
Or this.
Alrighty. So there's my friends over there climbing. I'm about to ask them if they want anything for dinner. Do you guys want some pizza tonight? I can run into town and grab some. Just wave your hands if you want it. Yeah! And we kicked it around the campfire for a night or two before rafting the Arkansas River a couple days later. Then I staked out a spot for my first big group campout. There ended up being well over 50 people who showed up, and I met some great new friends. We got to play with some other dogs and also got to meet some dirt bikers. A group of us kept the camping going for another 2 weeks until it finally came time for me to head into Denver, where I had been invited to put my ambulance on display for the Colorado Tiny House Festival. I met tiny home builders, van builders, and some awesome DIYers. Roughly 30,000 people came to tour these tiny homes. There were so many cool people who walked in and out of my ambulance, and they were all interested in the same stuff. When the crowds had left and the gates had closed, it was just us DIYers and a few builders who were left in a big grass field to spend the night. Friendships were made, and a group of us stuck together for another week or so. We could thank TJ and Olivia for letting us cram a 40-foot school bus and 2 ambulances into his backyard. 5-star camping for sure.
And then when it's in 60, it doesn't actually show us to start recording. If it's in 30, then
But being alone for so long had made me so much more observant of the people that were around me. And this is when I realized just how different everyone is. Everyone's situation's different. Everyone's values are different. Their goals are different. But the one thing that we all have in common is the pursuit of our own individual happiness. But as I said at the beginning of this video, there's 3 groups of people. And what I found is they're not groups, it's a spectrum. On one side, you have the people who are working a job purely to make ends meet, and they have no enjoyment or fulfillment in their work. It is simply necessary to support their lives or perhaps other responsibilities. Worst case scenario, you have a job you hate, and you can't find the time to enjoy what you deem worthwhile when you aren't working. Then on the other side, we have the people who hit all 3 points of the trifecta. They have a real passion for their work. They are naturally talented in this profession, and they bring real value to the world and themselves. Time working and time off blend together, and all those moments of introspection, they began coming together. Life is a series of decisions. Some are logical and some are emotional. Some small and insignificant, and others that have lasting impact. Those decisions are ultimately your responsibility. You need to make them. Where you are today is a result of the decisions you've made. Looking back into my past, I think I identified the crossroads that I had taken that led me away from my passions. In senior year of high school, I was planning to go to college to pursue mechanical engineering, and that made sense considering my interest at the time. But when I got started with college, before I started any mechanical engineering classes, I switched my major to business. And I asked myself, why did I make that choice? I did have an interest in business, and I most likely always will have an interest. I made that choice because subconsciously, as an 18-year-old kid, I made the decision to pursue what I thought would bring me the most money. And that path seemed like pursuing a business degree. And that's when the idea first came into my head that I didn't necessarily need to have a passion for what I was doing, just as long as it afforded me enough time and money to do what I wanted when I wasn't working. That's how I got into the cleaning business to begin with. I had the opportunity to buy something that was already off the ground. And I saw so many places where I could create additional value in that company. Plus, a service-based business made sense for where I was at in my journey. It's a simple model, and it doesn't take a lot of cash to get into. The problem is that I never had a single bit of passion for the service that we offered. I really enjoyed learning how to work on the business itself and making it more and more effective. The problems that needed to be solved on a day-to-day basis, well, they just weren't the types of problems that I was really interested in solving anymore. I wasn't working in that perfect trifecta. The decisions I made back then led me to where I am now. You can always make the decision to change. It's come time for me to make a decision. I was still at a crossroads. There were still 2 paths. One was familiar, and one was unknown. Do I pursue the path that aligns with my passions and interests, even if it's unknown, unstable, and risky? Or do I stick with the plan and launch this new cleaning company, something that I already know how to do and know to be financially rewarding? I had already made significant progress. I had a list of pre-launch clients, and everything was pretty much ready to go. There was a really unique twist in the business model, an environmental and community-focused twist, and I believe that the idea deserves to exist for many reasons. I have time, money, and energy invested into it, and to be honest with you guys, I have my pride tied up into it too. I came on here and I said that I was going to start another cleaning company, and I'm not. But out of all this, I think the biggest reason I wanted to go ahead and start another cleaning company was because I never got the chance to finish what I started with the first one, and I never got to reap the rewards that were coming my way. There's nothing I can do about that. And those aren't reasons to sink the currency of time into something that I don't have a passion for. I was not willing to spend the next several years of my life, and likely more than that, likely into my early 30s, doing something that lacked passion. I wasn't willing to do that. Not anymore. The outdoors and building cool stuff, those are my passions. I decided it was time to listen to that inner voice and lean into those passions. I don't want to wake up one day and realize that I wasted my life. For those of us who don't exactly know what we want to do with our lives, I think the only way you find out is by identifying the things you enjoy and are naturally inclined to do. And start trying them. You're only going to know what's down that path once you actually start walking down it. I really don't know what I'm going to do. I only have a vague direction. And some of you guys think that I would feel really nervous being in that situation. But to be honest with you, I feel free. I feel like I had just given myself permission to do what I want and try new things. If I fail, learn quickly and move forward. That's how you learn and grow. Here's what I do know. I want to spend time making quality videos on my passions, and I want to share them with you guys. I also want to share the journey of just trying stuff out. And if I fail, I fail. It's fine. I want to share more about this rig and how I use it. I want to build another rig, and who knows, maybe more. I definitely want to share some of the raw adventures, and I still want to talk about business, life, and, well, freedom. I'm figuring it out, and I don't see many people putting that out there. There's so much that I'm learning right now about life in general, and to be frank with you guys, making these videos has made me think so much harder about my life, and it's forced me to come to some conclusions. I'm confident that pursuing this path will start leading me in the right direction, and an idea or an opportunity will present itself along the way. And I'm sure many will, because there's already been a ton of opportunities that have presented themselves. Sometimes you just need to trust yourself and take those first few steps. I still know that I want to do something for myself in the long run, but now is time to apply all that energy into something that I'd actually really love doing. Maybe building another rig would lead me into the conversion business, or perhaps building off-grid homes for short-term rentals, maybe a campground, maybe a product-based business and run an e-commerce store. Perhaps something with media and advertising, because that's something I'm interested in. And there's pros and cons to all these ideas, and I haven't thought through all of them. But whatever comes in the future, it must be a product of passion. I gotta trust myself enough to take a risk. However, I think the real risk is living a life that you would regret in your final moments. There's nothing more terrifying to me than that. And this is a whole other video topic, but if there's a time for me to do this, it's now. I'm about as well positioned as I could be to take a risk. I have no debt, no rent, no girlfriend, no kids. I have a dog. This is my biggest responsibility. I'm young, and starting another cleaning company isn't going anywhere. I guess with AI in combination with breakthroughs in robotics being able to mimic human hand dexterity through artificial muscles, yeah, maybe it won't be around. But the point is, there's risk in everything. Why not risk it on something that you deem worthwhile? Coming next, the full story on how I bought and built this ambulance, including the first ambulance I bought, leaving my apartment, sleeping in this thing while I built it, and all the hurdles that came along the way.
Something's on fire! Where? Something's on fire! Help!
Guys, that was the first YouTube video that I've ever edited on my own. It took a lot of time to do it, so I'd really appreciate if you guys went ahead and subscribe to the channel, but only do that if you actually like the content that I'm putting out. And check the bell icon so you actually get notified when that next video does come out. And the other thing too is that I have a Patreon page that I started a little while ago, and I'm not quite sure what I want to offer over there. Right now I'm releasing my videos there before I release them to YouTube, so you'd get early access to watching the videos, as well as a monthly individual call for the next tier. I'm really not sure what I want to offer there, so if you guys could just do me a big favor and just check it out and at least give me some feedback in the comments so I can get some better ideas of what I can offer there to really add some value to the Patreon page. Thanks, guys.